Hey everybody, it's Tony's Eyes here, back for another episode of the SaaS Founders Show. Excited to have you guys here today. Appreciate those of you who tuned in last week. We had our tech throwdown. We got to talk to our panel of finalists, and we had the event in the evening, which went great. So appreciate everybody for all of those that tuned in for that. Hopefully you found that interesting. We enjoyed putting the event on. Today we're going to be back to the regular scheduled episode. We're going to be talking to Brent. Oakley is the co-founder and CEO of VIBENOMICS, and it's described as an audio out-of-home advertising company fueled by technology. So with that, let me bring Brent on. Brent, how you doing?
Good, Tony. Thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining. And tell us about VIBENOMICS. I just read the little descriptor there, but would love to hear. It sounds like an interesting concept. So tell us what it's all about.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the name. It kind of says it all. So we wanted to create a company that helped location-based businesses create a vibe in their stores while driving economics, which comes with Vibenomics. And really where the idea came from is my first entrepreneurial experience was I own several car washes. And as somebody that had a high-end car wash where people would come inside, I really wanted the feel to be like a W Hotel. If your listeners have been to one of those, it's high energy. You walk in, the music's banging and everything's a lot of fun the second you walk in the door. We really built that into our car wash experience. And one of the things that I found people really reacted to was more of the audio than they did visual displays. So with a world where we're all distracted by our own personal devices, it's hard to get their attention through eyeballs. So we really started running our own ads and our own commercials through an audio channel. And I didn't want it to sound like my voice. I wanted to be a really professional sounding radio station type of setup. And there was nothing around that was that fluid and that dynamic where I could think of something on the spot and then be able to send that to a professional voice talent. And in real time, within minutes, my message is playing back where it sounds like my car wash, Prime Car Wash, had its own radio station. And that's where the idea was born. And since then, we pivoted like most of your founders do 1,000 times. And we found ourselves in a slightly different spot now. But that was kind of the seed of Vibenomics.
That's pretty cool. So where did the idea come from? And am I there?
Yeah, I got you. I heard, where did the idea come from?
Yeah, and just what did the timeline look like between you having this concept, this idea to let's build it, let's take it to market.
Yeah, so where it really hit is one day I was in the car wash and there was a local kind of a local celebrity sports kid, a local high school kid that went on to play at Michigan State, an absolute stud here in the community I live in, just outside of Indianapolis. And his parents came in on a Saturday after their son just went and lit up somebody for about 30 points. And I thought it would be really cool to have a ESPN come on, and then we give the stats of their son and watch the reaction. And what ended up happening is I send over to a professional voice talent and I said, hey, let's try this. And the second that comes on, not only their parents were looking around and couldn't believe it, other guests were hearing it, and they walk up and they're like, how does Prime Car Wash have their own radio? Is there a DJ in the back? Like, what's happening? And that really started to resonate, to be like a moment where you think, can everybody in the country that has a location-based business have their own radio station? And in a technology world like we live in today, there's no reason why they can't. So that was the part where it was the aha moment that maybe I have something here. Shortly after that, I meet a gentleman by the name of Scott McCorkle. And Scott at the time was the CEO of Salesforce Cloud. Salesforce had just bought a company called ExactTarget and moved their second largest headquarters to Indianapolis, where Scott McCorkle, who's one of the original folks at ExactTarget, takes over as the Salesforce Cloud CEO. Scott had just left that and he was looking for his next thing. He comes into the car wash. here's what we're doing, and asked it to chat with me about this technology that's running this. And so I talk it about everything that we're starting to do, how we think about networking these huge companies together, like grocery stores, and having this huge channel to be able to advertise and talk to their customers. And Scott just said, Brent, I get pitched 5-6 times a week, and this is one of the best ideas I've ever heard, is owning your own network, providing an experience. But when you own this network and you can channel all this audio into this space, the amount of people that would want to pay to be on your network at point of sale when people are making purchasing decisions, this could be a really big idea. We should go turbo with this idea. So we did. We raised our first round of capital maybe 4 months after the gem of the idea started, and we raised an early round of about $3 million outside of the capital I was putting in just to fuel it. But that was kind of our first go-to-market idea. And really how we started growing is one of our very first larger customers was trampoline parks. And the reason we liked them is we could run their entire park through an audio channel. So we started getting kids on and off the trampolines. We would make announcements about wristband colors and Jimmy's birthday, and so we were running their entire operation from coast to coast in all these trampoline parks. And then we signed on Kroger. We did right around pandemic time, and once we had Kroger, we really realized CPGs and all these consumer product goods companies, the Kellogg's of the world, the General Mills, they have a lot of capital they want to spend to influence shopping habits at point of sale. So we started really pivoting to be more in that space so that we could make our customer more of the advertisers. So that's kind of the trajectory of how we found ourselves in this audio out-of-home advertising space.
That's interesting. I want to back up a little bit from, the current venture. So to talk about the car wash, right? Is that where you made the leap from, into your own business? I think you had a sales background.
Yeah. So I was in medical device sales, and I guess my very first venture was a company called Golden Years Home Care, where we were giving non-licensed, unskilled help to elderly. We kind of bridged the gap between nursing home and living at home. And I was doing that through a little app that was terrible and didn't go very far. I ended up selling that company and basically breaking even on the whole deal. So that gave me at least a little bit of experience to understand I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do this. I want to run my own ship. I had been at Medtronic, which is the largest device company in the world. I was doing heart stents and balloons, everything for invasive cardiology. And the job was fantastic, and I loved medical device sales. The problem is you're on call all the time. You work 1,000 hours. And I just thought, if I'm working this hard, I really want to do something for myself. I'd rather be working this hard and do it myself. And at the time in Indiana, there wasn't a lot of options for very nice, high-end, experiential car washes. Most of the industries had changed. When you go into grocery stores, they're beautiful now, and they have coffee bars and all of that. Car washing, at least in Indiana, was still very an automotive type of blue-collar environment. And I wanted to make it extremely country club driven and experiential. So that was the idea and where we started. And we built out the first Prime in Indianapolis, where it was all membership based. You can come in and get your car washed inside and out as much as you want. We had a full coffee bar, barista. The environment was cool for kids and marker boards and all that kind of stuff. So that really started to take off. So that was my first true entrepreneur experience, where I did that and was the CEO of that company. I built out, we now have 7 locations, coupled down in Jacksonville, Florida, some in Indiana. So that's where I really cut my teeth on being an entrepreneur.
That's great. I would love to hear a bit about what the MVP looked like when you first launched VIBENOMICS.
Yeah, it was terrible. Absolutely terrible. So a funny story so the MVP, actually, when we started bringing on the trampoline parks, the one thing that we'd send them these the knockoff blue cell phone devices because they were cheap and we could buy them for like $39. So we would send them and we'd load it up with our software to send, because you had to have a device plug in to play over the audio speakers. So we are a cloud software driven space, but kind of like if you think about your cable, if you have DirecTV or Comcast or Xfinity, you still have to have their cable box there. Everything's driven now, on software and cloud based, but you still got to have the machine plugging into your home. That's how it is with our system. We still have our box that plugs in because that's what we're talking to all the time. So anyway, we send these blue devices out, and in the early going, the only thing that we had figured out with our software is we could make announcements in real time. But what we hadn't gotten figured out yet is how to change playlists and rebuild playlists, and the amount of data it would suck out of our network. We didn't have all the infrastructure to put it all together. So all we were doing is we would load a bunch of songs on these little devices, and then we'd be able to go in real time on all the content and the creative we would do. But there was a time that we were playing and Justin Timberlake's "I'm Bringing Sexy Back" song comes on, and it was for a kid's birthday party. So they call us and they say, "Hey, we need you to eliminate this song." And as opposed to eliminating it, we had to ship them overnight a brand new device because we could never just change out the songs. We always had to ship new devices just to change the playlist. So our shipping costs were out of control. We were shipping devices all day just to change out a song or a playlist. It was hilarious.
Wow. Well, what's the saying that, if you weren't embarrassed by your MVP, you launched too late. So
that's right. We were embarrassed.
You did it the right way. So what did the iterations look like to get you to where you're at today? And how did you, that product development and improvement over time, where did the ideas come from? How much of those are driven by, your client feedback, as opposed to the ideas and roadmap that you guys have and map out?
Yeah, the initial idea was that we were going to be a true software business. So we would have this every location, and we built it with the idea of if Walgreens had 9,000 stores, that they would actually have the ability to have a system that they could program their own music, they could work within it. So we envisioned that Walgreens themselves would control our software and have seats to the software and be able to do all of this. What we found out is Walgreens doesn't want to do that. That's not their business. It's not what they are doing every day. They want us to do it. So we built this beautiful, gorgeous software that was supposed to be enterprise level, but actually what ended up happening is we controlled it. So now we only have a few people that handle all of this programming now for 6,000 locations. And thankfully, we did build it with the idea that Walgreens would be using it, because we made it so simplistic that now we don't have to hire a whole bunch of people to manage all of this. Our fully managed solution is all controlled by one or two people. And it's because we built such sophisticated software that can scale. So that was one piece of it. So the idea of them having seats didn't work out. So therefore, our economics of the business didn't make sense anymore. Nobody was going to pay for seats when we were the ones. They just wanted to pay a monthly thing for their subscription, but they didn't want to work in it. So therefore, we were thinking, okay, well, now we have all the controls. And what we can do is, we'll take Kroger, for example. They have 2,400 locations. In an hour, if we're controlling their space, we need to be able to break down that space and be able to segment it out to say, I got 24 spots of inventory, and I'm going to sell 18 of them and then use the other side for Kroger to do their own self-promotion. So then we had to put a cost per thousand, a CPM, on the network itself. So Kroger sees 11 million people a day. So then we had to work out, all right, if they're seeing 11 million people today and I drop a spot at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, how many people are listening and hearing? And that's how we came up with the idea to be able to charge and that's just simple advertising CPMs. And as I educated myself in this space, I started to realize there's not an audio vehicle like ours. So messaging in stores has been around since the blue light special. But to be able to buy it programmatically, be able to see it listed. So when big agencies go into like Trade Desk, for example, when the Trade Desk is publishing all their things, all these agencies can go and they can see where to buy video displays, they can see where to buy online advertising, and they start placing all through the computer. What they can't do is they can't do that through an audio channel in location businesses until us. So we are the first ones to integrate to be able to allow all of these people now to view our inventory and segment it the way they want and look at it and buy it just like they do on web and programmatically through digital displays. So that's where we're at today.
Yeah, so it's really an advertising model that you guys have built out, right?
Yeah, it's all advertising. Yeah.
Did you have any experience in that space?
I did not, and luckily, our VC, one of our VCs that came on, it's a company here called High Alpha. I had reached out. Scott Dorsey is the founder of that, and I reached out to Scott and said, I'm getting into this advertising world that I don't know anything about. Do you have any connections? And luckily, he was connected with a gentleman that was running Emis Communications, called his name was Jeff Smolian, and Jeff had a guy by the name of Paul working for him. He would build companies within Emis that would stand up, and they were all advertising, tech stacked companies. And Dorsey said, let me connect you with Paul Brenner. You guys should go sit down and have breakfast together, which we did. And my mind was blown. I mean, when Paul started talking to me about the opportunities and how big this network can be, and the fact that we own this audio channel that nobody else has, and the CPMs we could charge to get that close to a customer and influence their buying habits, he kind of just rocked my world to really let us know that we could do this. So long story short is I get Paul to come work for me as my chief strategy officer. I ask him to build out what it will take to build this advertising company, because I don't know anything about it. And ever since then, just last year we grew by 280% during a pandemic when everybody else was struggling in this space. We kept growing, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's exciting. So it still is. There's the software element to the business, but it is a managed service essentially, with the
Yes.
advertising as the monetization. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. It sounds like you found people to lead the different areas. What about on the tech side? Is that an area that did you have a CTO, or who heads up the development side of things?
Yeah, that's in the early going, and I'm sure your listeners will remember this stage. There's a point where your company is made up of nothing but developers, and you have one or two people selling, and all your payrolls going to these very expensive, worth it, but expensive engineers and developers. And we have a best in class team. Again, it was Scott McCorkle, who was an original at ExactTarget. His team that supported him at ExactTarget building that out. Two of those individuals came up, and now Chris Keeney is my CTO, and he built a team around him. And one of the things that I'm so happy that Paul Brenner, who is my chief strategy officer, I'm so glad we met when we did. And the reason I say that, and I tell him this all the time, had Paul come in early, I may not have spent as much time developing this best-in-class software. We might have skipped a lot of steps. So the fact that we had to go and position and move ourselves really allowed us to be forward-thinking enough to build out this beautiful, sophisticated software that now can plug into the Trade Desk. It can plug into Vistar. It can be listed on the exchange. And the way that it works and interacts, it allows us to truly be programmatic. When we look at our competitors that are very old school legacy type of music providers, they're just streaming devices, and they don't have a lot of sophistication to them, which makes it impossible for them to ever plug in programmatically like we have. So everything does kind of work out for a reason, I think. And as long as you stay the course and you keep doing and moving and keeping your eyes open, I think you look back a lot of times, and even the mistakes that you make, or the places that you'd been as a company, you can almost go back and connect the dots and say, thank God we screwed this up. If we wouldn't have done that, then we wouldn't be here. Thank God we, learned this to get us here. And I talk to other peers. That's what we talk about all the time is, timing. It's so important. Meeting Paul Brenner when I did versus earlier, it could have messed up the whole company.
Now, some of that I'm wondering is, does some of that, perspective come from the fact that this wasn't your first, business that you built? You have some experience and learning that, sometimes those points of, those trials and tribulations, they take you through something and they're learning opportunities. And I think that's the thing that entrepreneurs understand, that, every failure is really a learning opportunity and an opportunity for you to improve the business. Do you feel like you brought a lot of those things along?
Yeah, I think what it comes down to, and you said it perfectly, is when you are building your first business and you get into it, I think you always have the mentality, if I can just get here, everything will get better. And if I can just pass this place, everything will get better. And the truth is, it never gets better. It gets you to a different place. And then you have a whole new set of problems. So a lot of people are like, if I could just get my first big enterprise customer, if I could just get to, this to work. And then all that happens, and then you have more and more things. So really what I've started to think about for myself is, it's never I'm not going to a place. I'm just always moving, always going forward, and realizing along the way, things are going to happen to the business. Things are going to happen to me, and it's going to move me and change my opinion, my, I guess, the perception of what's going on. And my lens is changing every day. And I think if I wouldn't have gone through building a car wash and that exact same thing happening, because it doesn't matter if you're in the car wash business or asphalt laying or software, business is business. And, I've been lucky enough to be a part of a group called YPO. It's a young president's organization. And in my forum, we don't talk about business specific things. We talk about things that happen to you in general. And how you deal with them as a person, because that's really what it comes down to. It doesn't matter if I'm building a marketing software or if I'm building an ad tech software or whatever the case may be. All of our stories are always the same. It's just things that happen to you in a business. It's how you react to them and how much you listen and are willing to adjust and just change your perception every day.
I love it. This is some really good stuff. I have a mentor that used to say to me, for every new level, there's a new devil. That's kind of, what you're sharing there. And it's so true. We like to talk a lot about, people that founders lean on, whether they're mentors, a peer group like a forum. So I would love to hear more about the one that you're involved and just some of the value that you've gotten out of. We're big fans of it. Andy, who is our CEO and founder, is a member of a EO forum, and it's great what we've gotten out of it. And so just and how you leverage that network and interact with those folks.
Yeah, no, first and foremost, if you are a person that doesn't have a business coach or somebody outside of your organization, that is step number one. If you have to have that person from the get-go. And I'd even taken a step further is, a therapist. And I know that word sometimes has a bad notion, like something's wrong with you. But look, what we do in the lives that you affect, the more lives, the better your company does, the more lives you're affecting, the more jobs you've created, the more people rely on you, which means it's the more pressure, the more capital that you raise, the more expectations go up. To put that on yourself every day, it's hard. And what we do is really hard. So by all means, get somebody that can help you with that. And there's two sides of it. You're going to go to a business coach, and they're going to look at you as the person in specific situations. And then you join a group like YPO or EO. That really is actually shaping you more from 10, 20,000 feet, where you're not looking at your business. They're not trying to change you within your business. They're trying to change you, how you react to things, and how you deal with your family and your home life, and also building a business at the same time and the challenges that might have. And then a therapist is actually getting inside your soul a little bit and helping you think through and realize all of this pressure and the tightness in your chest and the things that are happening to you and the headaches, and you don't understand it. It's all okay, and here are mechanics that you need to deal with it, because it's hard. I mean, and there's no one, unless you've been through it, and unless you've been in the seat of a CEO, building a company and raising money, going through those, nobody understands it. Nobody. So you have to surround yourself with people that do, or you're going to drive yourself crazy. So I am a huge fan of getting that support somehow, some way, in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, I love it. And I love how you're talking about the point of basically our humanity, right? Like it's about the perspective. We can dive into the weeds and talk about, business tactics and strategy and all that, all we want. But the fact that the human nature is going to dictate how we behave. And until we wrap our hands around that, and the fact that as a founder, it's a lonely journey, and you have to be bold, and you got to be daring, and you're going to go through challenges. You got to learn how to come out on the other side better off. I think that's some really good stuff. So I love we're touching on this. A lot of times we get into the real tactical or granular, and I think this is a really important conversation to be had. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit, Brent, how your role has shifted, as a co-founder, as the CEO. What does the day-to-day look like today as opposed to, when you just launched, and how did that evolution happen?
Yeah, there's been a lot of growth that I've had to figure out and go through some of my own demons as you grow. And what I mean by that is when I started Prime, what's nice about a Main Street business like Prime Car Wash is you hire a lot of young folks, typically not educated. There are folks that are maybe going through high school or college, they're part-time, and they're just there for a job. And the way that you lead that organization is very, if you follow the disc, you got to almost be a very high D in that situation, where you're more of a dictator. You're saying, this is the way we're going to do it. You don't really ask for opinions. This is the way we wash cars here at VIBENOMICS, take it or leave it. When you get into a space where you're hiring very educated people who know their field extremely well, crazy cerebral engineers and people who understand way more about certain aspects of the business than you do, that you actually cannot be a dictator anymore. You really need to raise your eye and make sure that you're just being an influencer of the organization and where you're going, and that you're able to give them the sight to where you need to reach and be, but you allow them to get you there. And that was a huge transition for me, because I'm used to being a person that says, this is how we're doing it, this is the way we're going to go. Where that really came to fruition for me, and where I really took a step back as more of a hands-on execution person, is when I hired Paul Brenner. And, I brought him into the business, but I was still very much telling him where we were going. And finally, one day he just came to me and he said, look, you hired me to come in here and build this advertising unit for you. This was the understanding, correct? I said, it is. And he's like, well, if you're continuing to tell me what to do, how can I build what I think this would be? And I need that trust from you. And once I took a step back and let him do what he does, what I really realized is I was free now to go around and influence the culture of the business, how we onboard our people, the way that we treat them, and where we're going. I was able to cultivate relationships with big advertisers and talk at a much higher level. It freed me of being in the weeds every single day. And that trust also empowered Paul to really rise up and just be an incredible leader within the organization. So I've been lucky enough now to hire a COO, along with a vice president of finance. And I've been able to learn all of those people are brilliant. That's why you bring them in. I think it was Steve Jobs, the famous quote is, I don't hire smart people and tell them what to do. I hire smart people so they can tell me what to do. And I think that's really what it came down to.
How hard was that to make that shift from you're in control, you're dictating the way everything's run, how it's done, so on and so forth, to having to say, okay, I got to let go. I got to relinquish a little bit of control here, or a lot, and put trust into these people. I know that is a big challenge for a lot of people. How did you deal with that? And kind of how long did that take for you to really embrace that? Hey, he's the guy, he's going to lead this, let him do his thing. And then also that mindset to be able to see the opportunity. I can now work on these other areas of the business. Was that take some time? I'm sure there was a level of discomfort. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that has to happen is you have to commit to it. And most of us are, I think there's several different types of founders. You have engineers and software developers that have this great idea, and they're one way. And what typically happens with that group of people is they actually don't lean in enough. They stay out of the weeds, and they don't want to touch the stuff they don't know about. They're not willing to do it. And sometimes they need to go find somebody that's more of that D and somebody who can lead it. Then you have somebody like myself that is, I wouldn't say that I am good at any part of the execution. I can, if I had to point a direction I'm pretty good at, it's the sales side. But everything else, when it comes to finances or product development or any of those, they're not my strong suit. But I still had a very big opinion in all those things, and I wanted to run everything. So I had to commit to the fact that this thing's only going to work if I let people who are great do what they do. But the most important step I had to take is I did commit early to let my people do their thing. What ended up happening, though, is the company and all the people who had been following me all this time, they got really confused. Like, who's leading this? Who's really in charge? And it was a very hard thing for me to sit back thinking that they wouldn't think of me as the leader any longer if I turned everything over to my executive team, which is actually completely not the truth. What ends up happening is they think of you differently. They don't approach you on very tactical things any longer. They will only bubble up big strategy things that hit your desk, which keeps you elevated to be able to keep your mind thinking about what's 2 years down the road, what's the next steps. And that was a hard thing, is feeling like I was going to lose the value and the respect of my team if I allowed Paul and the rest of my team to lead them. And it doesn't happen that way. It just, they look at you differently, but they do follow Paul, and they do follow Marty, my my COO, but they look at me in a different way. They still want to hear, what's the vision of the company? Where is it going? They need to have complete faith that I do have the next phase of this thing figured out. And it works much better that way.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear that, where you're saying that people aren't coming to you for the little tactical, things, and that was probably a relief, right?
Yeah.
But they are coming to you for those bigger, higher level strategy elements, which are where you should be focusing your time anyway. So that's pretty interesting. The fact that you did have, you were able to successfully step back, put good people in place to lead those areas. How did you then, once that shift happened, keep, that team, your leaders, in alignment with your big picture vision, and make sure that you were on the same page as those guys? How do you do your strategic planning? How do you communicate with that, team of, your leadership? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that can destroy a company is when you leave a room and you're not all aligned. It's the number one thing that I think causes a cancer within an organization, that tears it apart from the inside out. And one of the things that, it's kind of like, your parents, and if those who have children, it's as parents, you can go behind a closed door and you can have disagreements and you can argue and you can, figure it all out but when you leave, the kids have to know that mom and dad are completely in sync. And that is exactly the way that the business of an executive team has to work too. Is my expectation is when we sit around the executive table, my team's going to push me, they're going to challenge me, and I'm going to do the same back to them. But whatever the decision that is made at that table is, regardless of where you stood on it, even if you don't agree, if that's the consensus of what we're doing, when we leave that thing, everybody is buckling up and we're doing it. And we are dropping any of the ill will towards the idea, and all of that is checked at the door. It's the only way. And if it fails, there cannot be any of that told you so mentality. This is it's a very team driven environment. I'm a huge sports guy, played sports my whole life, but you always have coaches that says what happens in the locker room stays in the locker room. And it's the whole thing. When you go out and you execute on the game plan, even if you lose, you don't want to hear, well, we should have passed the ball more, we should have ran the ball more, we should have done this, we should have done that. It doesn't matter. It's we made our choice, we went that direction, and we learned from it. Now we're back in this table at the table again, figuring out what to do. But the number one thing I think to get buy-in from everybody is everyone has to be aligned the second you walk out of these important meetings.
Yeah, totally agree. That's I think we heard that from Amazon. I don't know if it's a Jeff Bezos thing or what, but disagree and commit. And that sounds like what you guys do. Once you make a decision, everyone's, all in on that and trying to make it happen. That's really
right.
cool.
Yeah.
Brent, I would love to hear how, in your role, are you still the sales leader in the organization?
No, I've turned over the sales to Paul, and as the chief strategy officer, really what he's in charge of is more of the revenue side of the house. So Paul is now chief strategy officer and president of Audio Out of Home. I will still broker or sit at the table when needed, towards the end of finalizing deals or to help push it over the hump. A lot of times Paul will invite me in just to make a presence as the CEO to give complete commitments and that we are all in on this partnership, and it helps close or solidify some deals. So that's really the extent of what I'm doing. My main focus is typically on what's next for the business, how we're going to either integrate with a different third-party partnership, next raise and where the fund's coming from, possible acquisitions, going out and looking for competitors to go buy, things like that are really where I spend a bulk of my time now.
Yeah, that's great. And I do want to hear in a bit, I want to hear about the what's next piece for sure. But the reason I asked about the sales experience is I think that that's important. And we've done, I want to say about 50 of these shows now. And I don't believe we've really had an extensive conversation with someone that had, came from that sales background. And I think that's incredibly valuable. I do think we talk to a lot of technical founders. We talk to the people with the marketing experience, so on and so forth. But I would love for you to share just some a bit of how your background in sales you believe helped you grow the business, and maybe some tips for the people that don't come with that experience in the sales realm. Because early on, when you're a founder, you're selling.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing a lot of things. You're doing almost everything, but that's a key one, critical. A little bit of your take on that.
Yeah, I think I think about this a lot, and I know a lot of peers that, to your point, are extremely more technical. They built a great product. I can't imagine. I'm so thankful that I am sales minded, because I felt like I could find somebody that could build the product, but nobody was going to be more passionate about what I was doing than me. So when I was out selling it, and it's my money that was in early on, and it was my friends who were investing and giving me cash to build this thing. So the fact that I could go out and tell the story and so wholeheartedly, I think that'd be hard to hire that out. So if you're a technical person looking for a salesperson, boy, that sure, I bet, is hard to find somebody that is as passionate as you are about the product you built. So what I would say though about building an organization. So the one thing I say all the time is we are no question a sales first organization. Some people might say, if you build a great enough product, that it'll take care of itself. I actually think that with the way that iteration happens and development world, products going to be great for a blip in time. You have to be passionate and find new ways to make it better all the time and keep selling. And the one thing that we talk about within the organization is I don't care what you were hired for. Everybody in this company is in sales. So I don't care if you're in product and you were brought here. You're a salesperson in this company. And what I mean by that is when you're out talking about it, when we bring in new employees, you need to know the pitch. You need to know what, like, the product people need to understand what the salespeople are out saying. And when we walk by and we say, "What do we do?" I want it to sound as crystal clear as it is when our salespeople say it, even coming from the product people. And what that does is when they're out talking to their developer friends and they're able to say what we do, and it's almost like a salesman doing it, it excites their peers. And now they want to come work for us. They're like, "Wow, that's really cool. I love what you're doing." So you're always selling. Everybody from end to end in the company is always selling, no matter what. Some of the breaks that you get from third party, a lot of our product folks and engineers, they're out talking to really cool software designers all the time. And if they're able to sell what we do, you're going to trigger one of those engineers to say, "You know what? We could actually integrate and make this happen and start this." And so everybody's always selling, everybody's always bringing ideas. And I would always just tell everybody to say, this is a sales organization. No matter what you do, we are a sales organization. Everybody's always selling.
Yeah, I love that mindset. Don't know if you ever read it, but I love the book "To Sell Is Human" by Daniel Pink. It's kind of that concept. It's, we're always selling every aspect of our lives, relationships, family, work, whatever it is. So we might as well learn to be good at it because it's such
Yeah.
an important skill. So I love that. That's fantastic. Brent, I guess I would love to hear, you said, big focus is on what's next for VIBENOMICS. Tell us, what's on the roadmap for the next 12 months, let's say.
Yeah. So a huge announcement today. We just hooked up to the trade desk. That press just dropped, so we're excited. It's going out, and the trade desk, for those that don't know, it's the largest display side purchasers. They're demand side platforms out there in the market. So what that means is essentially, if you're in the stock market, you get on E-Trade or you get on something. E-Trade is a platform that lists all the different stocks and everyone that you can buy from in real time. That's essentially what a DSP is on our side of the business. Now, all the agencies and brands can see all the inventory in real time every day of what's available at all of our networks, like Kroger and Circle K and Quick Trip and all these folks. So they can build out their own campaign. So how it's coming up, they can geo-target areas. They can think about, if they're Kellogg's, what you want to be selling during this time. You can change your campaign. So we are the very first ones to ever be put on the DSP as an audio company. It's really baked around web and display and visual. So we're the first audio connected. So we're really excited about that. And what that opens us up for is true integration from path to purchase. So when you start really thinking about an agency or a brand, when do they want to start targeting you, and how do they bring the whole story to fruition? So you think about, I'm going to buy Pandora because when Tony is out on his walk or jog in the morning, he's listening to his Pandora station. I can drop my commercial there. And then I'm going to buy web. So when you're on Google or Facebook or any of those, I know I'm targeting you there. Get in the car and you listen to your podcast, I can target you there. And then the next stage is when you actually get into a store and now your wallet's out and you're ready to make a buying decision. I want to be the last thing you hear, and that's VIBENOMICS. So it's truly a path to purchase mentality, and we get to be a part of that journey now, which is changing the trajectory of the company for good. So.
That's awesome. Well, congrats on that big announcement. Exciting to have you on here today to be able to share that. Very cool.
Yeah.
Um, where can people that are tuning in? Where could they learn more about Vibenomics? Pay attention to you, your journey. Where are good places to follow?
Yeah, what's great is because we are the pioneer of audio out of home advertising. If you just Google that, Vibenomics shows up on the first two pages of audio out of home. So follow along. What out of home advertising? If people have never heard of out of home advertising, it's a fascinating place where um, tens of billions of dollars are being traded. Really monthly. It's unbelievable the amount of advertising that's going into out of home advertising and digital out of home advertising. You go into New York and you see all those screens. You now drive on interstates. It's no longer the stale boards. It's all digital. So everything is moving to that world. It is incredible the software that's being generated to drive it, the analytics and the business intelligence that are coming out of it, the understanding of our behaviors as human beings and where that's going. It is scary and awesome all at the same time of what's happening. So definitely check it out. As far as Vibenomics goes, certainly follow us on all the social media feeds. And, we try to do a really great job of not just talking about ourselves, but talking about the industry and how fascinated we are with it. It's a place where all advertisers are going. And it's the biggest brands in the world. When you think about Anheuser-Busch and all of those companies that we consume every day, where are they spending their money? Start getting into digital out of home and audio out of home, and you'll learn a lot about where the world's going in advertising.
That's awesome. Super exciting stuff to be in that, such a rapidly changing, important space. Awesome work you're doing. Brent, as our last question, the question we love to ask our guests is, if you were able to go back, and I would even say, seeing that, you've been through, you've had a few businesses, if you're able to go back to the start before that entrepreneurial journey and have a cup of coffee of your past self, what one piece of advice would you give?
Yeah, I think I started out with it a little bit is, entrepreneurs, I always say you have to have at least a few screws loose. They just can't all be loose. But you got to be a little bit crazy to be able to do it. And I think one of the saving graces for me that I didn't know what I was getting into in anything that I've done. So I didn't get into the car wash business. And before I knew this is overwhelming and it's too much, I had already completely cashed out my 401k. I'd completely depleted our savings account. I had mortgaged our house. I was at a point where I didn't have a safety net. I had to make it. I had no choice but to move forward, or we would definitely have had to file bankruptcy. And I say it all the time to people is, if I would have had a cushy situation behind me, or if I would have had a place that I could have been like, it didn't work out, I probably would have retreated. I would have gone back, but I put myself against the wall. And it's amazing what you're capable of when you back yourself against a wall and you got to claw and fight to get there. And the other thing that I would say is it will work out. I mean, it's just crazy how everything happens. And as long as you keep moving and as long as you keep getting up every day to get something accomplished, it will all work out. It's a crazy thing the universe has for us. But every single person you ever talk to, it's like you're in this dream for so long and you're just going and going. And all of a sudden you finally realize one day and you look up and you look back at everything you've accomplished and you can't believe it. And that's a moment where it gets emotional for you. But that's what happens as you get into it and you just keep moving, you just keep going, you just keep going. At some point, you will be able to take a big breath and think, wow, I have a multi-million-dollar car wash now. Wow, I've built a advertising company that has a network 6 times the size of Pandora. Wow, I have and you think that, but all the while that you're growing and you're trying to work through it, it's a blur. It's just an absolute blur. So just keep going through the blur, keep going through the fog. It will all work out.
That's awesome. Really great insights and perspective here today, Brent. Very much appreciate your time. So thank you for spending this 50 minutes here with us. Really appreciate it. To our viewers, I encourage you guys to check out VIBENOMICS, Brent, Oakley. Really appreciate you being on today. And to our viewers, we will be back again next week. Same time, same place. Thanks a lot,
Thanks, Tony.
everybody. Take care.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.